My brother made my life hell. He staged a fake date for my wife to destroy my marriage. He thought I wouldn't notice and that she'd come to him as soon as I stepped aside. But you know what happens when you play with fire? It burns to ashes. And that's exactly what I made him feel. Brace yourself. This isn't even the worst part. My name is John. I'm 28 years old. And a couple of months ago, I would have said my life was perfect. My wife, beautiful, smart, we had everything. 3 years of marriage, and I was sure we were a team. Lisa, she's 27, has always been like a prize to me. You know, when you meet someone and think, wow, she's the one. Plus, my brother Michael, he's a couple of years older than me, 30, has always been like an older protector. We weren't exactly the dream team, but still, he was my brother. But recently, I started noticing something was off. It began with small things, the kind most people wouldn't even pay attention to. First, it was her sudden, slightly strained excuses for why she couldn't spend the evening with me. I'm going out to dinner with my friends. I have a work meeting. You don't mind if I skip dinner, do you? At first, I brushed it off, but then it started snowballing. I suddenly realized that we hadn't spent much time together in the last couple of weeks, and when we did, Lisa seemed like her mind was always elsewhere. She was checking her phone every 5 minutes as if something life-altering was happening there. And that's when all the alarm bells started ringing in my head. But that was only the beginning. One evening, when she said she was going to meet her friends again, my brain couldn't process it calmly anymore. I was literally on pins and needles, asking myself the same question over and over. What's going on? But of course, like any normal person, I tried to keep it together. I thought maybe I was imagining things. After all, she had never given me a reason not to trust her, right? Although, even that thought started to feel like I was making excuses for myself. Then came the moment that confirmed my worst fears. I was at home, relaxing on the couch, and I got a call from Tom, my best friend. Tom's the kind of guy who always seems to show up at the right time in the right place. His voice immediately had me on edge. He said, "John, man, are you home?" Of course, I was at home, sitting there, trying not to lose my mind over Lisa. And then Tom said, "You need to know. I just saw Lisa at a restaurant." My stomach dropped, but I tried to stay calm. So what? Then he hit me with, "She was there with some guy, just the two of them. And it wasn't just dinner, man. She was holding his hand." That moment felt like a slap. No, worse. It was like someone punched me in the chest and knocked all the air out. I was silent as Tom kept going. "She's definitely not at a business meeting, bro. They looked like they were on a date." Okay. That's when my brain went into overdrive. I called Lisa immediately, and as usual, she answered in that same casual tone, like nothing was going on. "Hey, Liz, where are you?" I asked as calmly as possible, though inside I was boiling. "Oh, I'm out with my friends," she said without a hint of hesitation. I could even hear her laughing, like someone near her had just told a joke. But you know what? I wasn't about to just sit there and listen to this circus. "With friends, huh?" I paused, took a breath, and continued. "You sure it's friends and not some guy?" At this point, I was waiting for her to flinch, but she kept that strange, calm mask. "Yeah, of course, friends. Just dinner." "Oh, sure, dinner with friends, where someone's holding your hand. Great story." I tried not to explode because something inside me kept saying, "Stay calm, John. You don't know the whole truth yet." But honestly, I was close to getting in my car, driving to that restaurant, barging in, and seeing the whole scene with my own eyes. However, I knew that would be foolish. Lisa is good at hiding the truth. If I started accusing her openly now, she'd just brush it off as a misunderstanding and make me look like a paranoid fool. But man, that feeling, when everything inside you is tearing apart, yet you have to keep a straight face and pretend everything's fine, that's the worst. A couple of weeks went by, and my unease transformed from mild discomfort into a real, gut-wrenching sensation that I was being played. Lisa was off to another one of her girls' night outs. Honestly, if I heard those words from her one more time, I'd want to turn around and bang my head against the wall. It was happening way too often. like we were living in some sitcom where no one has jobs and everyone's always out partying. But this time, I wasn't going to sit idly by like a fool, naively believing in her friends. No, brother, that's not how things work. I decided to take action, not just sit back and watch. So, right before she left for her meeting, I quietly and discreetly installed a tracker on her phone. Yeah, like in those spy movies. I even found it kind of amusing for a moment, caught up in the drama of it all. But then I quickly realized, this wasn't for fun. The tracker showed her movements in real time. And what do you think? Of course, there was no meeting with friends. She was headed to an upscale restaurant. You know, one of those places where you drop $100 for a piece of fish and a glass of wine, because they're serving art on a plate, not food. And judging by her usual habits and our budget, this was definitely not a place for a casual girls' night. That's when you hit a wall. Your brain immediately starts whispering, who's she having dinner with? And right then, all those thoughts you've been dreading start creeping in. Cheating, betrayal, lies. I mean, how else could you interpret this? But brother, that's not all. Just as my mind was racing with images of someone holding her hand in that fancy restaurant, I get a message on my phone. From Michael. Talk about the last thing I expected at that moment. Hey bro, you know she's seeing someone else, right? That's when my heart started pounding. What the hell, Michael? Out of the blue? You know that feeling when suddenly a puzzle piece falls into place? Yeah, just like that. My brother knew something, and not only that, he chose to text me about it at that very moment, like he'd been watching this circus unfold from the sidelines for a while. Naturally, my suspicions shifted to a whole new level. Suddenly, Michael's playing the role of the concerned older brother who apparently wants to warn me? But why now? Why just as I'm starting to piece this all together on my own? And then a new question arises. Is Michael part of this story, or just an observer who's decided I've been blind for too long? The world around me started to blur into a fog. I sat there staring blankly at my phone, trying to wrap my head around the idea that everything I thought I knew about my life might be a complete sham. The next day, I decided it was time to get to the bottom of this mess. I arranged to meet Michael. Honestly, I was walking into that meeting with the mindset that if he actually knew something, he'd better not try to play the hero. This conversation was going to get heated. We met at a cafe, and man, I didn't even have time to order coffee before he was already sitting there with that predatory smile of his, the one I'd never trusted. You know the type? People who smile like they've already won the game before it even starts? That's Michael. I sat across from him, and before I could even open my mouth, he blurted out, "Hey bro, Lisa's been with someone else for a while. Thought you already knew." It was like a cold shower. No, seriously, it wasn't just unpleasant. It was like someone telling you that you've been wearing your shirt inside out for the last 3 years and no one bothered to tell you. And the worst part? He said it so casually, like he was talking about the weather. "Oh yeah, Lisa's with someone else." As if it were no big deal, like, get over it, man. I tried to stay calm, but inside, a storm was brewing. "Who?" Slipped out of my mouth before I could stop it. He kept smiling, as if he was enjoying every second of this. And that's when I realized something wasn't right. He was speaking too calmly, like he didn't just know about it. He was part of it. "Who the hell is he?" I wasn't holding back anymore. And instead of answering, Michael leaned back in his chair, took a long sip of his coffee, and looked at me as if he was about to deliver some epic villain speech, like he was Dr. Evil or something. He smiled that damn smile again and said, "It's not who, John. It's what." That's when I felt myself boiling. What does that even mean? What the hell is going on? Then he laid it all out. Turns out this whole thing about Lisa being with another man, that was his doing. Yeah, you heard me right. He set up the fake date to make me think Lisa was cheating on me. And you know why? To destroy my marriage. He said it with this air of superiority, like he was explaining how the world works, and I was just an idiot who hadn't figured it out. You're serious? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It wasn't even anger anymore. It was surreal. At first, I thought he was just trying to protect me, to warn me. But no, this was deeper. I could feel that this wasn't some twisted joke. And then he said the most disgusting thing. Yeah, I've had a thing for her for a long time. That's right, you heard correctly. He decided to destroy my marriage to get Lisa. He wasn't even trying to hide it. He just calmly said he's wanted her for a while and figured the easiest way to get her was to get me out of the way. Like it was some business plan, and I was just an obstacle. At first, I didn't know how to react. Part of me felt sorry for him, and another part wanted to punch him in the face. Probably both. Because who in their right mind stages fake dates to ruin their own brother's life? He explained how he orchestrated everything so I'd believe Lisa was cheating on me. Like some clever manipulator, he wanted me to be the one to leave her. Then he'd swoop in, comfort her, and play the hero. Yeah, like I'm just going to give up so easily, right? So, there I was, sitting there, trying to process the fact that my own brother had just confessed to trying to ruin my life for his lust. Honestly, at that moment I felt like I'd stumbled into some cheap soap opera where the villains walk around with ridiculous smirks and concoct ridiculous schemes. I was furious. Seriously, how could my own brother be so treacherous? This wasn't just some neighbor or random guy from work. This was my brother. How? The only thought running through my head was, he's going to pay for this, and I won't rest until I give him the same kind of surprise he gave me. But here's the thing. I couldn't afford to act impulsively. As much as I wanted to go and knock Michael's teeth out right then and there, I needed to be smarter. My plan had to be flawless. First of all, I had to expose him, and I had to do it right. If I just went to Lisa and told her everything without solid proof, she might think I'd lost my mind, or worse, assume I was just being paranoid. So, I made my first move. I met with Lisa the next day. Calm, without a hint of the storm brewing inside me. You know how in movies the hero walks away while everything behind them explodes? That was me. Calm on the outside, chaos inside. I started with simple questions, like it was no big deal, like I was just curious. Hey Liz, how are your friends? You guys meet up often? I said, making sure not to hold eye contact for too long so I wouldn't give myself away. She smiled, but it was strained. Oh yeah, we get together sometimes. Sure, the classic sometimes. But this was only the beginning. I kept digging. And how about those work dinners? You were at a restaurant last time, right? All work-related? My tone was so relaxed, it was like we were talking about the weather. Lisa hesitated. Honestly, I was expecting more resistance, but she just started rambling about small discussions and work stuff. Her face gave it all away. She didn't know what to say. That's when I knew it was time to move to the next stage of the plan. Listen, I've been thinking. I pulled out my phone, opened the tracker app, and with a smirk, showed her the map of her recent movements. Lisa's eyes widened, like I'd just shown her a horror movie playing out in real life. So, Lisa, what about this restaurant? The one where you were meeting your friends? She was silent. Wow, the emotions in that silence. I continued, this time with a calm but firm tone. I know you didn't do anything, but do you know who's been trying to make me think otherwise? And then I dropped the bomb. Showed her the call logs, all of Michael's dirty tricks. Every detail, every piece of evidence, and the cherry on top, Michael's confession. Her face changed. At first it was shock, but then fury. You realize he orchestrated all of this to destroy our marriage, right? I added, not giving her a moment to process all the information. What? Michael? Are you serious? She nearly choked on her anger, and I could see how the puzzle pieces started coming together in her mind. All those little oddities in Michael's behavior, his overly friendly glances in her direction. Now everything made sense to her too, and at that moment, she decided to join my little revenge game. Her face was no longer confused like before. Now she was clearly ready to help me get back at Michael. And you know what? That was my small triumph. I didn't just convince her, I got her on my side. Michael had no idea what kind of storm was coming his way. Lisa and I prepared for the meeting like real conspirators. Everything was planned down to the last detail. Lisa would play the victim, and I'd be the mastermind behind the scenes, ready to tear down the curtain of deception. The plan was simple. I'd hide in the shadows of the restaurant while Michael, completely confident, would come thinking he was about to destroy me and start a new chapter of his life with Lisa. But from the start, his version of the script was completely wrong. I arrived at the restaurant early, picked a table in the corner where I wouldn't be seen, and ordered something inconspicuous. The waitress threw a couple of suspicious glances my way, but who was I to explain what was really happening here? Let her guess. Inside, I was boiling. But on the outside, cold as ice. Michael was about to show up. Lisa was already in place, looking perfect. Exactly how Michael expected her to look. A little anxious, but still open to his heroic manipulations. And finally, about 15 minutes later, when I had almost finished my water, he appeared. Michael. He walked into the restaurant as if floating on air. Confidence poured out of him like he was the king of the evening, convinced that he was in control. He didn't even need to speak. His walk and expression said it all. I've done it. Lisa will be mine. He sat across from Lisa with that, "Well, babe, I'm here to save you" smile. It was a joke. You could immediately tell that Michael was playing by his own rules, completely unaware that the entire setup was for his downfall. He acted like he was doing Lisa a favor just by showing up. He ordered wine and stared at her like his words were about to finish off my marriage, and put everything into his hands. But Lisa? She was an Oscar-winning actress. She played her role perfectly, nodding, smiling, agreeing at just the right moments. And Michael kept going on about how caring he was and how much he couldn't stand by. He didn't even realize it was all a trap. He thought he'd already won. He thought Lisa was just moments away from falling into his arms. Then the fun began. Lisa, waiting for the right moment, suddenly changed tactics. She stood up, grabbed her bag, and without saying a word, headed for the exit. Michael sat there blinking, like a character in a movie who'd forgotten his lines. You could see it on his face. What the hell is happening? He tried to say something, but Lisa wasn't listening. She was already walking away, leaving him in complete shock. And at that moment, as Lisa headed for the exit, I stood up and met her halfway. She threw me a quick glance, and together we turned back to the table, where Michael still sat, like a fish out of water, not understanding what had just happened. His face was a masterpiece, a mix of horror, confusion, and utter defeat. It was both funny and pitiful. He expected anything, but definitely not this. The confidence drained from his face like water evaporating off a hot pan. I pretended to be surprised by his reaction, and with sarcasm I said, "Oh, Michael, it seems you misunderstood something. We've always been a team. Why set up this circus?" Lisa stood silently next to me, unmoving. Her gaze was fixed on him, like a tiger ready to pounce on its prey. Michael tried to say something, but it was a pathetic attempt at words. He couldn't defend himself because his mind was completely crashing under the weight of his shattered illusions. He expected to see Lisa walking away with him, but instead he got both of us, united against him. And it was damn beautiful. We sat back down at the table, and Michael just stood there as if he still couldn't understand what had just happened. And then I delivered the final blow. "You know, brother, the plan was good, but you forgot one little detail. Lisa was always on my side." After the surprise we gave Michael at the restaurant, I decided that one moment of humiliation wasn't enough. This guy deserved more. Michael thought he could ruin my marriage and walk away unscathed? No way. I was going to throw him a party he'd never forget. I decided to organize a family dinner. Big, loud, with everyone in attendance. Our parents, Lisa, me, and of course, our dear Michael. It had to look perfect. Like just another family gathering where we'd talk about life and exchange pleasantries. But in reality, it was going to be a trial where Michael would be the defendant and I would be his judge. We gather around the long table at my parents' house. The table is set as if a king is about to arrive. Everything is formal and beautiful. but the tension in the air is palpable from the very start. Lisa is playing her role perfectly, smiling, acting as if nothing had happened. Michael, on the other hand, is trying to act as if he's already forgotten about our little incident at the restaurant. But I can see it on his face. He's nervous, and rightly so. He knows I'm not done with him yet. As everyone begins to eat, I wait for the perfect moment. Everyone's engrossed in conversations about their day. Mom's asking Lisa about work. Dad's talking to Michael about trivial things that, frankly, don't matter. And just as the atmosphere hits its peak of normality, I stand up, tapping my spoon against my glass. "Hey guys, I've got a little story I want to share," I start, my tone light but confident. All eyes immediately turn toward me, and Michael freezes like a schoolboy who's just been called on to speak in front of the class. "You know, I recently realized that life is a lot like a game of chess. Sometimes you think you're making the right move, and then, bam, your piece is suddenly under threat. But what's even worse is when your opponent turns out to be someone you thought was on your side." At this point, I glance at Michael. His face begins to turn a shade of red. But this is just the beginning. "So, recently, I found out that my dear brother decided to play for the other team," I add, my voice dripping with sarcasm. Everyone at the table goes silent, the tension rising, while Michael starts to lose his composure. "You don't mind, do you, Michael, if I tell everyone about your brilliant plan? About how you tried to destroy my marriage by staging a fake date for Lisa with another guy? Also that I'd believe she was cheating on me and leave her. Then you'd swoop in to comfort her like the hero?" I say this with such ease that it feels like even the walls of the house are about to crack from the tension. Michael's face flushes red. He tries to say something, but the words get stuck in his throat. My parents look at him, shocked. Mom grabs her wine glass, trying to process what she's just heard, while Dad sits there like a stone statue, unable to believe his ears. "John, it's not like that. You've misunderstood," Michael begins, but his voice shakes like a student caught cheating on an exam. "Oh, really? You're going to say I made all of this up? Or maybe you're going to tell us Lisa wasn't at the restaurant and you didn't try to win her over behind my back?" I raise an eyebrow and give him a look full of disdain. Everyone knows there's no room for excuses anymore. Michael starts mumbling something about it being a mistake or a misunderstanding, but no one at the table buys his pathetic excuses. Even Mom, who usually defends both of us, is now looking at Michael like he's a stranger. "A mistake, Michael? Seriously? You tried to frame me just to get Lisa? You thought I was so stupid I wouldn't notice? And that she was so dumb she'd leave me for you?" I add, no longer hiding my anger. At that moment, Lisa stands up, turns to my parents, and quietly but firmly says, "Everything John is saying is true. Michael really did try to destroy our marriage." With those words, she sits back down, and the room plunges into a heavy silence. No one knows what to say. Michael lowers his head, clearly realizing that his plan has completely fallen apart. That dinner was the final nail in the coffin of his scheming attempts. After that dinner, where I exposed Michael to everyone, his life began to crumble, slowly but surely. He could no longer look anyone in the eye. I saw it every time he tried to cross paths with me or our parents. You know, Michael used to be the kind of guy who walked into a room and immediately commanded everyone's attention. Now, he's just a shadow. Even our parents, who were always ready to support both of us, now treat him like he's a mistake they'd rather forget. The first thing Michael lost was the support of the family. Mom, who used to dote on her golden boy, stopped defending him. Dad? Well, let's just say he was too angry to even speak to him. All those dinner conversations where Michael once reigned supreme? Now they were minefields for him. Whenever someone mentioned his name, our parents would quickly change the subject. It was almost comical to watch as the power and influence he thought he had vanished overnight. But that was just the first crack in his fortress. The next blow came from his job. Once you lose the trust of those closest to you, it starts to affect everything else. At work, where Michael had once been the king, he became the guy no one noticed. He was no longer trusted with big projects, and his colleagues began to avoid him. I don't know if the rumors had made their way to the office, or if it was his own crumbling ego, but the fact remained. Michael was losing not only his family, but his career too. And his friends? Now, that's the funniest part. Michael always thought he had a lot of loyal friends. You know, the kind who are always around when things are good. But the moment you fall, they vanish, as if they were never there. One by one, they started distancing themselves. Michael used to have these great weekends, hanging out with them on yachts, drinking, living the high life. Now those parties happen without him. He's becoming that guy who nobody calls or texts. Michael's world is slipping into total isolation. Meanwhile, Lisa and I worked on rebuilding our marriage. It wasn't easy, to say the least. After everything that happened, trust had to be rebuilt from the ground up. But you know, she was firmly on my side now. Together, we talked through everything that had happened, figuring out how to move forward. Yes, it was hard. Every time we thought about Michael and his schemes, it felt like the worst kind of betrayal. But Michael wasn't ready to give up. He started sending Lisa messages. Can you believe it? After everything he'd done, he thought he still had a chance. He sent her long messages full of teary confessions and ridiculous excuses. I did it out of love, he wrote. You have to understand. I just wanted to be with you. Seriously, Michael? You think after all of that she'd just walk away from me? Of course, Lisa ignored all his attempts. But Michael didn't stop. He kept messaging her, asking to meet. He couldn't accept that his plan had failed. In his mind, the fantasy still existed that one day Lisa would see him as her savior and leave me for him. It was pathetic, honestly. His desperation was almost pitiable. Lisa, though, stayed strong. She knew that the only right decision was to be with me. We had been through so much, but after everything that had happened, she saw who was truly on her side. And Michael? Well, he was left with nothing but his sad dreams and a broken life. It's been a few months since Michael's life fell apart. And you know, I'd love to say that his apologies moved me, but no. It was like receiving random spam in your inbox. Seems important, but you don't even bother opening it. In short, nothing. One evening, I'm relaxing after work when a notification from Michael pops up on my phone. I think, what now? Maybe he's finally realized how badly he messed up? And sure enough, it's a tearful message, practically an epic. Forgive me, brother. I was wrong. I know I let you down. Can you give me a second chance? Honestly, I couldn't help but smirk sarcastically. A second chance? Second? This guy managed to burn not just bridges, he set the whole city on fire. And now, after his life has crumbled to ruins, he thinks I'm going to open the door and say, "Oh sure, Michael, come on in, let's be friends again." I tell Lisa about his message, and she laughs like it's the best joke she's heard all year. Do you really think he believes his own words? She asks, giving me a look full of mild disbelief. And honestly, I'm not even sure what Michael is thinking anymore. Maybe he's so broken that he's completely lost touch with reality. Lisa and I make our final decision. For us, Michael no longer exists. And no, this isn't one of those situations where people say, let's just distance ourselves for a while. For us, it means completely ignoring his attempts to come back into our lives. He made his choice, and we made ours. We both understand that no matter how many times he tries to apologize or beg for forgiveness, it won't change anything. Life has finally settled into some kind of peace. Lisa and I have grown closer again. This whole ordeal left scars, but together we're healing them. This nightmare with Michael taught us to be more cautious about whom we trust. Before, I was too naive. I trusted people just because they were family. But you know, family ties aren't always a reason to forgive. I've learned that sometimes family can be the biggest threat. It was a lesson I learned the